Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Veg Networking Canada, where vegan plant-based companies connect and collaborate. We honor, acknowledge, and respect that many of us are located on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of many Indigenous peoples of Canada. Today, we have a special guest with us, an award-winning photojournalist, sought-after speaker, photo editor, three-time author, and passionate activist, a world traveler to over 60 countries documenting our complex relationship with animals. She is also the subject of acclaimed Canadian documentary, The Ghosts in Our Machine. Veg Networking Canada is pleased to introduce the founder of We Animals Media. Welcome, Joanne McArthur.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Well, we're thrilled to have you and learn a lot more about you and what you got going on in the world and how you're showing up. So can you tell everybody listening a little bit more about what led you to go vegan?
Sure. Well, it started, there was always an innate compassion there for animals that my parents didn't try and change my mind about, which so kudos to my parents. And then in my 20s, I had the opportunity to get to know some chickens. My mom moved out to the countryside. She had some dogs, a cat, and 10 chickens who ran around the yard. Chicken was my favorite food. And when I got to know those chickens, I thought, oh no, I can't eat my favorite food ever again. This is sad, but at least I know, now I know that chickens are as sentient and complex as the dogs who are running around the yard and the cat. And so I gave up eating chicken, and that was part of the door opening to my understanding of animal sentience. And I just started researching. And back then, which I guess was 97 or 98, I went to PETA. Thank you to PETA. That was a great resource for many of us and still is. And looked at their pamphlets and read about factory farming and just started eliminating the animals I was eating until I was vegan. So that was 21 years ago. I remember thinking I was going to be ostracized and it was going to be so hard, but I will say it's a pleasure and a joy and a journey, a good one.
Yeah, a great one. And you're right. Kudos to your parents for not trying to persuade you otherwise. So, switching gears a little bit from personal to what Veg Networking Canada is all about, it's about business owners and entrepreneurs getting together, connecting, collaborating. Um, what is your origin story when it comes to entrepreneurship?
Well, I'll just throw you a curveball here and I will say ADD. Now that's a new part of my story, and I'm very grateful to have a diagnosis because it explained a lot about me, how I didn't quite fit in at school. I found school very difficult. I could, I knew I was a really smart person with a lot of creativity, but sitting still, listening, concentrating, paying attention wasn't working for me. I'm someone who always needed to be out on my own, pursuing the creative ideas that I had, and I had a lot of ideas. And I think that is quite the origin story for entrepreneurs, whether they have ADD or not. I was diagnosed a year ago, and I'm super grateful for that because it explains a lot. And now I have this to work with. And yeah, I think that a lot of entrepreneurs are people who, have these ideas and who have a lot of drive. And that certainly was me. I was obsessed with photography, conflict photography in particular, but then I came to realize that there was a major unreported conflict, and that was the conflict between humans and animals, and that needed reporting. And so what I saw ahead of me was a project that I could build and unfortunately spend my life building. Yeah, it was something new and necessary. I created a new genre of photography. That's my dog's toy squeaking. Sorry, here. He's a puppy. Um, yeah, so I went on to create animal photojournalism, which sounds like, nothing very new and interesting, but what's different about it is that it's not wildlife photography. People often said, oh, you photograph animals, you must be a wildlife photographer. I'm not. I do photograph them, but that's not the focus. I'm not a companion animal photographer, and photojournalism is about the human condition, whereas animal photojournalism includes everybody. And so I think that's a bigger answer than to suit the original question, but that's been a little bit about the path.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Now, in terms of We Animals Media, WAM for short, where is your company, your brand going in the future?
Okay. Well, this was a project called We Animals for about 15 years. It was me and my camera shooting 6 to 8 months a year. And I wanted to be more strategic with all that work that I was doing. So I decided to create a photo agency and bring in more people. And so now and this is a not for profit, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But we formed a nonprofit photo agency. We create materials that can be used for anyone who's helping animals for free. And we do this by applying for grants, and we have monthly donors. Thank goodness, they're wonderful. And we now have 110 photographers. So from like one girl with camera to 110 photographers and the equivalent of 6 full-time staff. So from fundraising to communications to operations and so on. And we're really proud of what we've done and what we've built. We're proud to have almost 30,000 assets available for NGOs, and almost 600 NGOs have used our work now globally. And where it's going is that, I'm really not into growth for growth's sake. I want to be very careful, very deliberate, collect data on what's working and what's not working, and pivot accordingly. So 5 years ago, when we launched as We Animals Media, I was like, okay, we finally know what we're doing. We're a photo agency. We have a stock site. We do stories. No, like it's not that easy. We're just continuing. I feel like we're still a young organization. Now I know that 5 years in, we're still a young organization that is figuring out how best to do things, how best to reach people, how best to tell story, and to figure out our partnerships, figure out what is needed in the animal advocacy space so that we can continue to be a good provider.
Definitely a good provider. So your industry is animals, photography coming together,
Yeah.
which is unique because that in and of itself might kind of be like a transformation. But the question for you is, what are some transformations or trends in your industry?
Mm. Well, within the animal movement, it hasn't it just been so excited to see the diversity of efforts. We have people on this call who are entrepreneurs and running programs and writing books and building video games. I mean, it wasn't like that for the better part of the advocacy movement since, its nascence, when often it was people picketing, which is a great thing to do outside of vivisection labs and so on. So now we have animal law and mega vegan food all over the world, and journalists and the arts and sciences. We have ethology, which is really exciting. This is the study of the behavior of animals, which is really allowing all of us to highlight just how incredibly sentient animals are and how deserving of respect they are. So within the animal space, super exciting space. Oh, we haven't even talked about cultivated meat. Like that's here as well. There's a lot going on in the animal space. We're being a lot more strategic, and I love it. And then in the photography space, what we've had a hand in doing is bringing animal photojournalism to the world. And people call themselves animal photojournalists now, and if they don't, there are conservation and wildlife photographers and photojournalists who do more animal photojournalism. We also, in the photo space, we really push this idea that animals, climate, humanitarian issues, all this, those aren't in bubbles, and they shouldn't be. They shouldn't be classified that way, and they're not. So let's talk about how animal stories that we photograph overlap with climate stories and deforestation and human rights and so on. So that's what we're doing in the media space, and it's an uphill battle. And in one of the main reasons it's an uphill battle is because our work has a mission, and that is to create cultural shifts and create a kinder world for animals, which is activism. And activism and journalistic objectivity, media is quite wary of that. So sometimes they say, oh, well, we really like your work, but you're activists, so we're not using it, or we're not including it. And but that's changing every year. Every year that's changing. So it's an exciting space to be because we can influence and we can build.
Absolutely incredible. Yeah, lots to look forward to. You mentioned previously 30,000, maybe more, 30,000 assets free of use for NGOs. At the beginning in the intro, we talked about how you're the subject of the acclaimed Canadian documentary, The Ghost in Our Machine. We say that to say giving away 30,000 assets, giving away your own personal time to a documentary, clearly those are forms of giving back. The question is, and there's no ever any right or wrong answers for the folks that we speak with, and you might answer it from your lens personally and or through your business, but when you hear the words charity or giving back, what does that mean? What do you or your company do?
Hmm. Okay, well, I think the easiest answer is to start with our ethos of generosity at We Animals Media, which of course I built. And so that's, I think, part of how I like to live my life. But we wanted to make it as easy as possible for animal advocates, academics, NGOs to have high quality visuals that they can use for their campaigning. And sometimes paying for those things is a barrier, and they end up using work that's not very good or not very effective. And so we still have this model where people can access all of this work for free. They can give a donation for in return for use, which they often do, which is great. And that helps us to continue doing the work. And with the grants that we apply for and are given to us, often we get these grants because they really appreciate our spirit of generosity and that we are influencing and supporting a global movement. And but it makes it harder for us because there's not just this regular cash flow from image sales. We do have commercial licensing. We do sell books and we get royalties from that. We sell a few prints here and there. And so it's a new way to do things, especially for a photo agency, but it is working. And I think it's working because people um, see its value and see the capacity building that is inherent in that as well. And a little bit more about giving with well, through We Animals, we mentor a lot of people. We do photo critiques, portfolio reviews. I do a lot of personal one-on-one mentoring to photographers. And we also donate books and prints to charitable organizations who are raising money for their animal work. Yeah, we'd be a lot richer if we weren't doing that, but it's okay. This is great. I love what we're doing.
Very cool. Amazing. Yeah. When you hear the term give back initiative, it's oftentimes organizations are going to pick a charity or an outfit to attach themselves to, and that's sort of their give back initiative or their give back strategy. But very cool to hear that you're creating your own through the work that you're doing. Very, very unique. Very cool.
But I
So
actually, if I could add to
yeah, of
that,
course, of course.
the way that I did it before I ran We Animals Media was to volunteer. And I'm a lifelong volunteer, whether it was walking dogs and cat cuddling at the local Humane Society, or when I had a little bit more money, I would volunteer overseas at sanctuaries. And it was really cool to be able to volunteer for them, but take photos for them as well, and then give them a body of work that they could use for their fundraising. Now, some photographers are going to say, don't advocate for this, Joanne. You're going to put us all out of business. And I understand that photographers, can't always and shouldn't always work for free, but I was able to do that because I was a corporate photographer for many years. So you all know me as doing this animal work, but I was able to do all this animal work because I did corporate work. And but I've always sort of saved money so that I could use it to volunteer or to give it away. Where I got that, I guess my family as well, very generous people involved in the church elders, helping the local community in every which way, picking up refugees 10 hours away to drive them to their new place, and all these wonderful things that I think my parents inspired me to do.
Well, that's cool. That was like a little kind of part of almost the last question, which is like advice, lessons, tips kind of stuff, but we'll touch on that a little bit later.
Sure.
Um, So, aside from, feel free to again mention any of your own resources that you've created yourself. But the question is, what are some resources, books, apps, podcasts, documentaries, websites, could be whatever you quantify as a resource, specifically that you would recommend to business owners or entrepreneurs?
I don't know. You, well, okay, total left field, total left field. It's not an app, it's not a podcast, it's none of these things. It's an author. And that author is Mathieu Ricard. And he is a vegan Buddhist monk, formerly a celebrated scientist who left that world to study Buddhism and meditation. And he has been an incredible guide for me. As a vegan, a very busy vegan person out in the world who cares a lot about humanity and animals. And he carries with him and teaches an equanimity that is very hard to attain and that probably could benefit all of us. And he has my favorite book by him is called Happiness. And I've read it many times. It's totally dog-eared and underlined and annotated. And he helps me understand how to bring peace to my life in this very chaotic world and in this very brutal world where there's so much cruelty and violence and polarization. So I recommend Mathieu Ricard, not only his book Happiness, but he has a book called My Plea for Animals and a really big book called Altruism. So
Well, we love left field here. So answers that we haven't heard before are always welcome for sure. So that question often lends itself into the next one, which is just inspiration. What does that mean to you? Where do you source it internally, externally? So how would you answer that question around inspiration for you in your
oh,
business?
that's funny because I could have answered, of course, that last one with this one, Mathieu Ricard. Now, inspiration, I gain a lot of inspiration from my mentors. I've always been someone who sought out mentors. I think we all need them in every realm in our life, whether it's for our business, learning new things, psychological mentorship, when you're really struggling with how to do things, how to relate to people, all sorts of things that we need advice for. Find a mentor. Find a mentor. They are invaluable. I've had them since the very beginning of my career. It started with Margaret Williamson at Canadian Geographic magazine. And I was probably 18 or 19. And I just went and knocked on her office door and said, hey, can I make the coffee around here? Can I file things? Can I just like be around and absorb what's going on here? And I did that to a lot of people. And said, if you can I help you out and can I have 5 minutes of your time while we're doing this thing? And so yeah, mentorship, inspiring and also inspiring to give. Yeah.
Amazing. Okay. Well, we're at the final kind of conversation starter question, and I'll just echo what you said because that's also, again, an excellent answer for the last question, which is, do you have any advice, lessons, tips for business owners and entrepreneurs? You talked about the importance of mentorship. You gave some practical tips to kind of like even how to do it. It doesn't need to be big and scary. It can be very simple. You also talked about earlier, and I mentioned this, how sometimes corporate work can fund and fuel your dreams, essentially. So feel free if you want to touch more on those points and or other points for business owners and entrepreneurs as it relates to like lessons, tips, advice.
Hmm. I've seen I've seen a lot of people give up too quickly when they're building a business. And and so you can have the creativity and the dream, but you need a business plan and you need perseverance. People give up too quickly and don't expect your dreams to come true in 6 months, a year, 2 years, sometimes 3, 4 years. I was speaking with an entrepreneur. I won't mention her. Everyone will know her. She's in the animal community, but I saw her a few weeks ago and she said, it took me 4.5 years to take these basic steps in my organization and they're killing it now. They're so happy. But, she got in there thinking, yeah, 6 months, a year, like I'm gonna get this place whipped up into shape. But things take time and and be open to feedback and criticism. That's really hard for all of us in our personal lives, in our business lives. But the more you flex that muscle of taking in, not only taking in critiques, but like seeking them out. What do you think I'm doing right from people you trust? And, what do you think's working here and what's not? Just let me have it. I'm all ears and that can get you farther ahead. On a personal anecdote around that is that as a photographer, we're very attached to our work. We spend a lot of time, money, effort, and heart in creating the visuals. And if you're an artist, musician, whatever, you know what that feels like. But you really need outsiders to say, you know what, you almost got it, but you didn't. And we often don't seek that out because it's scary and it hurts. But I once had a photo critique that lasted about an hour and it changed my whole career. And he just, tore apart my work. Why are you doing this? What about this? No, this one's no good. Hey, you didn't look at this picture. Bring that one in. And it 1 hour changed my life. And so I highly recommend seeking out those things that might hurt a little bit, but get you farther ahead.
That's incredible. Um, with all that being said, Joanne, is there anything today in the conversation with us that maybe we missed or that you'd like to go back to? Just kind of want to give the floor, leave it open to you before we let everybody know your website and your Instagram.
I'd really like to open up the floor and hear people's questions and have a great discussion. So I'm happy to leave it at that. And of course, you mentioned the website. I do want people to know that we have an amazing resource for the animal advocacy movement. It's weanimalsmedia.org. That's where you'll find our images, our videos, our mentorship programs, and so on.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. So everybody, you can find out more, tap in online, weanimalsmedia.org and on Instagram at weanimalsmedia. Joanne, everybody who's here with us live, everybody who's listening to this on your own time, whenever that is, thank you for carving out some time and spending it with us. This has been another episode of Veg Networking Canada, where we spoke with the founder of We Animals Media, Joanne McArthur, and we look forward to catching you on another episode soon. Take care. Bye for now.